Are you ready for all of your employees to become quiet quitters? If so, then by all means, keep doing what you're doing. But don't say I didn't warn you. I remember it like it was yesterday, my first day at my first office job. I breezed through the doors of a fancy Silicon Valley startup that had generously agreed to employ me for 6 months. I didn't know if these people were going to like me, nor was I confident that my 2 engineering degrees were going to be enough. I did know that I really needed this job, and I needed the contract position to turn into a full-time offer soon. Otherwise, I was not going to be able to start making those big old student loan payments. I was hired alongside 2 other people my age, and they told us we would complete our training and onboarding together. Phew, friends. At least we'd be in this together, right? Right? On the 3rd day, they informed only 2 of us that the other woman had been terminated. And what a word for it, right? Terminated. I was suddenly terrified that one misstep could get me terminated as well. To say that I was feeling unwelcome is putting it mildly. It's a very dangerous thing for anybody to start a job feeling like this. Even after I completed my training at that company, simple things still made me feel like an imposter hiding among the worthy. Managing my email using some tool called Outlook, understanding what people were talking about in meetings, and deciphering all of those 3-letter acronyms, or TLAs. This was a new world that felt so foreign to me, and with each mistake I made, I felt more and more like an outsider. Was I motivated to work hard? Absolutely, yes I was, but out of pure fear, not out of passion or joy. That was my introduction to the corporate world, my first job after grad school. That experience made me feel like I had been cast in a corporate version of the Hunger Games, without any useful training or preparation, even though I had amassed such a huge amount in student loan debt. Oh God, was it all for nothing? All that time and money wasted. I knew if I didn't do a good job working for that company, they would cut me loose also. Far too many of us have had a similar rocky start with a new job. I remember sitting in my dull gray cubicle, looking up at the clock, counting down the years, months, weeks, and hours until I could retire. And it was soul-crushing, realizing I'd have to do this for another 4 decades at least. Oh, that experience was 10 years ago. A few jobs and companies later, it was again, day 1. But this next job, in contrast, was very different. My manager introduced himself and handed me a mysterious-looking robot about the size of my head, plus a few tools. He told me to take it apart and put it back together and come up with ways to improve the assembly process. How cool, right? Compared to that first job, this was an entirely different experience. And he was trusting me to tell him how to improve something? Now, this was a job I could see myself staying at for a while. Harvard Business Review tells us that organizations with a standardized onboarding process experience 62% greater new hire productivity and 50% greater new hire retention. That first job I told you about, I stayed at for less than a year, reluctantly. That second one, I stayed for 5, and it was fun as hell. Nobody should feel how I felt during that first job, and I have made it my mission in life to provide support for people entering the workforce. If they can learn lessons from my mistakes, maybe I can help them feel empowered and give them a leg up in their career. This was the birth of Allie from Corporate, your workplace big sister. Suddenly, I knew what I had to do, so I got right to work. I began making career development videos on social media during the spring of 2020. My videos were a crash course to surviving corporate. They were topics like email etiquette and job searching, things I wish someone would have taught me before my first job. After a few of my videos started going insanely viral, I'm talking over 1 million views, reading all those comments helped me understand Gen Z a bit better. Since I started posting professional development content on social media, my videos have been viewed over 100 million times. And I've gotten over 500,000 comments. Thank you. And I've gotten over 500,000 comments of other people telling me how they feel about their white-collar jobs. At first, I thought I recognized the emotion behind their comments as anger or resentment. But as I dug deeper, I realized the real emotion behind their comments was so much worse than anger. Young people feel indifferent about work. They have such a negative start to a job, they just don't care anymore. What begins as a bad onboarding experience quickly morphs into feeling taken advantage of and overworked by their employer. And as a self-preservation mechanism, they'd stopped caring altogether. Young people are feeling no obligation to go above and beyond at work. In fact, it's the opposite. Lately, they're drawing a line with their managers, saying things like, well, that wasn't in the job description. Now, that's a very extreme example of setting a boundary at work, but I'm seeing more and more young people do this in order to protect their mental health. As soon as I heard of young people setting firm boundaries like this, I immediately took to my social media channels, and I asked the question that we're all wondering: what happened? My parents' generation certainly never would have told their employers no when they were my age. They kept their heads down, they worked for 40 years at the same company, and they got a pension. So where'd things go so wrong? Let's blame COVID. During the pandemic, the world got to see that most businesses put revenue first and employees second. To workers all around the world, it was a harsh reminder: your employer is not your family. And in times of extreme global crisis, it's every person for themselves. Inflation resulting from the pandemic has even made it difficult to live comfortably. Just a few decades ago, the head of a household could support their entire family on one salary alone. They bought a house, they took their family on nice vacations, and they got that pension. But things are very different now. Recent data shows a huge transformation occurring in our workplace today, and there's bound to be irreparable damage if business leaders and managers don't take action. In 2022, Gallup estimated that over 20% of millennials job hopped the previous year. That's over 3 times the rate of non-millennials. Gallup also estimated that this job hopping and turnover is costing the American economy $30.5 billion a year. Think interviewing, hiring, training, onboarding, and then the cycle repeats when people leave. Understanding why these numbers are so devastating requires a conversation about quiet quitting. So, if you've never heard of it, quiet quitting is doing the bare minimum not to get fired. You've mentally quit your job, you just aren't telling your manager. And in a best-case scenario for a quiet quitter, nobody notices, and you still get that paycheck. And you haven't expended much energy for a company who would drop you like a hot potato at the slightest impulse. When talking about quiet quitting on social media, young people are saying things like, act your wage. Don't break your back for your employer. And my personal favorite, they'd replace you tomorrow if you died today. Now, you might be thinking, oh, that's a little dramatic, right? But let me ask you this. What if your doctor was a quiet quitter and you had a surgery scheduled next week? What if your child's teacher at school was a quiet quitter? What sort of education would they be getting? What if that bridge you drive your car over was built by a civil engineer who was a quiet quitter? Oh God, what if that pilot who flew me here last week? This could destroy our society. Or worse, it could kill somebody. Now, the quiet quitting mentality is no recipe for raises and promotions at work. But that's just it. Young people are not trying to climb the corporate ladder as previous generations once did. They don't even see it as a ladder. They see it as a hamster wheel that goes around and around and around. Instead of working hard for a promotion, young people have found a much easier way to get a big pay bump: job hopping. What used to be a red flag on a resume is now considered normal. Here's how it goes. You stay at a job for less than a year, reluctantly. Then you job search and you get offers with 10, 15, 20% higher pay. Who wouldn't want that? Additionally, the 401k is replacing the pension. So the retirement vehicle, the pension, which used to remain with the employer, is now becoming the 401k, which remains with the employee. So theoretically, you could just job hop your way straight into retirement. So, what is the answer to this problem of young people hating their jobs? Unfortunately, there is no one-size-fits-all solution. But there are a few things that business leaders and managers can do to get their employees to want to stay. Here are 3 of them. I call them Gen Z's ABCs. A, appreciation. Help an employee feel appreciated from day one. Make their first week amazing. Plan something ahead of time. Employees can tell whether onboarding is an intentional part of the workplace experience or just an afterthought. Help them feel so appreciated, they go home and brag to their friends and family about their cool new job. Here's some ways that you can do this. You could assign them an onboarding buddy. You could invite them to a workplace happy hour. You could even schedule one-on-one meetings with them with people that you think they should meet during their first week. You can even gamify onboarding. You can have a workplace trivia session or Jeopardy or an office scavenger hunt. It feels so good to be appreciated, doesn't it? Especially when you're being welcomed onto a new team. B, boundaries. Support employees setting healthy boundaries at work because they will whether you like it or not. Boundaries help to create clear guidelines on how someone wants to be treated. And when they're being treated well, they will stick around. As a leader, set a good example by setting healthy boundaries yourself at work. For example, take your paid time off regularly, like a vitamin. Let your employees see you setting a good example by taking your paid time off and setting healthy boundaries so that you are continuously creating a psychologically safe environment where it's safe to share new ideas, challenge the status quo, and be curious. That's how businesses grow. Finally, C, challenge them. Have your employees take a DISC assessment their first week, D-I-S-C. DISC is a tool that measures personalities to help us understand behavior in the workplace. Challenge them in these ways. And also communicate with them about how they want to be challenged so that their efforts at work propel them in the direction they aim to take their career. They will appreciate you challenging them, and it will motivate them during tough times, because overcoming challenge builds resilience. I'm going to be honest with you. Implementing Gen Z's ABCs probably won't be enough to stop the quiet quitting movement. Paychecks and the occasional pizza party are not enough to make people feel appreciated. They want to feel like it's worth getting out of bed every day. You need to help them avoid the Sunday scaries, that deep sense of dread just thinking about having to work on Monday. But here's a shift I'm seeing. Instead of constantly dreading, Gen Z has introduced us to the concept of soft living. Imagine a world where waking up isn't driven by the blare of an alarm or rushing to your desks, where the rhythm isn't set by deadlines, but by the moments that truly matter. This is the essence of soft living. It's not an escape from responsibility, but a deeper embrace of what makes life genuinely fulfilling. It's not giving up on your goals, it's reshaping them with well-being at the core. And it's also understanding that success isn't always measured by a paycheck or a title. I want all of us, from the break room to the boardroom, to take a stand reshaping the very fabric of our workspaces. Imagine a world where we all thrived at work. Together, we have the power to create that. So, will you join the movement?